Good morning. Today is March 5th, 2018. My name is Michael Conley. I'm the Director of Finance of the North Reading Public Schools. And as we kind of move through the FY19 school budget process, I thought today we would spend a few moments talking a little bit about the school budget revenue offsets and the subsidies, the various subsidies that kind of play into a school budget and what really helps kind of supply all the expenses and instructional costs and so forth that make up a school budget. It's a lot of times more than just what's appropriated at town meeting and part of the operating or general fund budget. There's a lot of additional revenue and monies that exist that I think a lot of times is not always known or in the forefront on the part of the community and parents. So we're going to spend a few minutes today talking about what some of those offsets are. And as a quick little glance at the revenue offsets that North Reading Public Schools has had over the last decade or so, this graph kind of shows you a little bit of how much those amounts have been. And as you can see, we rely quite a bit on the various subsidies for grants and revolving accounts that to make everything work and to fund the school budget. And this chart shows you that the kind of the 8 to 9 year average or so has been a little over $2.4 million that we've come to rely on. And over the last 8 or 9 years, you can look at some of the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs of what that amount has been. But generally, we rely on about $2.5 million to really make everything work and to fund everything that is needed, to bring the supplies and the materials and the positions and to make the North Reading student experience is what it is today. If it wasn't for these various subsidies through grants and through the revolving accounts and through the unfortunately the fees and the tuitions that we do have, it would be hard to make everything work the way it does currently work. So you can kind of see the ebbs and the flows of things, but generally we are relying on quite a bit of money, in the range of $2.5 million. These past couple of years, that amount's been a little bit higher. In fiscal 18, we're relying a little bit more than $2.7 million, and then next year our requested budget includes some slight changes to that based on some anticipated decline in some of these revenue offsets and one-time revenue that has been available to the district, and that's projected to go down to about $2,658,118. So the first item I'm going to talk about is what are some of the federal and state grants that the district has. So certainly the district applies and seeks both federal and state grants on an annual basis. The majority of these federal and state grants are what are known as entitlement grants, and that's essentially grants that the district is automatically eligible for, that both the federal and state sort of offer on an annual basis. The allocation amount depends on several factors, generally, student demographic data, certainly some of its, data within the community, in terms of, median income or property value data, but most of it is generated in terms of the amount that we're entitled to by some student demographic data in what our student enrollment is. That really drives the amount that districts receive each year. So most of those entitlement grants are federal sources from the federal government, but these grants, the early childhood grant, a small allotment of $15,000 that helps fund some of the paraprofessionals in the preschool program, about 0.8 FTE of a preschool paraprofessional is funded by the early childhood grant. The teacher quality grant is a grant that we rely on with an allocation of about $30,000. That helps fund professional development opportunities for teachers. It's overseen by the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Patrick Daly. It also helps fund our teacher mentor program. So we have teachers that are new to the district receive a mentor for their first year of employment. those mentors work with those teachers throughout the year and receive a stipend, and this grant helps support not only that mentorship program for our new teaching staff, but it also helps fund some additional professional development opportunities. The next grant that we rely on is our Title I grant, an allotment of about $60,000. This allotment, given some changes in the formula at the federal level and changes in our student demographic data and et cetera, has actually decreased. At one point, we were seeing this grant be as high as $80,000, then it was down to $70,000. Now we're looking at an amount around $60,000. So we have lost some funding here, Title I funding, over the last couple of years based on changes to the formula and how the state calculates, low-income data for particular students or families, and that formula has changed somewhat, and it's impacted our funding for not only North Reading but for a lot of communities throughout the Commonwealth. But our Title I grant essentially funds tutoring opportunities for students in need for additional academic support at our Title I eligible schools. So not every school is deemed a Title I eligible school, but we do have a few schools in the district, mainly the middle school, the Hood Elementary School, and the Little Elementary School that are Title I schools. And we are able to receive some additional funding to help some academic supports in the form of student tutoring at these schools. And the largest federal grant is what is known as the IDEA, or Special Education 240 grant, and that grant is in the range of $520,000, and it helps fund mainly some special education paraprofessionals. This is a special education grant that are working with our special education students. It funds about a little over 4.5 paraprofessionals. It funds our special education transportation costs as we transport students to various programs throughout the state, and various programs, out of district programs. It helps fund a portion of those transportation costs. And then it helps fund contractual services, and particularly additional consultants and contractors that we bring in to work within our in-district special education programs and apply some additional services for students. So that grant is the largest grant. It's $520,000 that we rely on an annual basis. The next program is what's known as the Circuit Breaker Program. This is a state-funded reimbursement program. It essentially is designed to assist districts with providing a level of reimbursement. That reimbursement ranges, but typically it's in the range of 65 to 75% of reimbursement. If it was fully funded, that amount would be 75%. And we use it to offset our special education out-of-district tuition costs. And essentially how it works is the state sets a specific threshold, which is typically about 4 times the state average foundation budget per pupil amount, which is approximately $42,000. So for each expense that exceeds $42,000, if we had a out-of-district placement costing the district about $50,000, for the amount greater than $42,000, which would be about $8,000, the district would receive in the range of 65 to 75% reimbursement on that $8,000, which could compute to about a little over $5,000 that we would receive in reimbursement. So it is an amount that we've typically received somewhere in the range of $600,000 to $650,000 annually, and it's a significant offset that we rely on in our budget. The other source is revolving accounts. So this district has several revolving accounts that we use as direct offsets to the general fund budget. Unfortunately, North Reading, like many other districts in the Commonwealth, are assessed fees and tuition costs for optional programs that obviously supplement the educational experience in North Reading. These programs and activities are certainly very important to the kind of all-around, well-rounded educational experience, but unfortunately, North Reading, like many districts throughout the Commonwealth, are in a position where we can't fully fund these within the appropriated operating budget. So we do rely heavily on assessing a user fee or assessing a tuition cost for these optional programs. And these are the accounts that we do this with. The athletic revolving account, we take in about $300,000, and we do assess user fees and gate receipts. That helps support costs for our entire athletic program: coaches, transportation, supplies, ice rental, equipment. So there's a variety of costs that the user fee and the gate receipts help support. The extracurricular programs, the student activity programs at the middle school and the high school, there's a $200 user fee that is collected, and that helps directly offset the cost for those teacher club advisor stipends that are working with our students in these after-school extracurricular programs. Obviously, we have an optional busing program for students that don't qualify for free busing. They can opt to purchase a bus pass, and the amount that we collect directly offsets our transportation costs. We run 10 buses daily, and the amount that we collect helps offsets about pretty close to about half that cost from the user fee that is assessed. We do have a facility rental revolving account, which helps offset some of our building and grounds maintenance budget for upkeep and repairs and supplies for areas that we are renting to the public and to the community, in the amount of about $75,000. And then we have two tuition-based programs: the full-day kindergarten program. This helps support the cost of the teachers and the paraprofessionals working within the full-day kindergarten program. And then the preschool program we assess a tuition amount that helps support the cost of the preschool teachers and salaries, and in some cases the paraprofessionals working within our preschool program at the Little Elementary School. So we do rely on these revolving accounts and these user fees and tuition costs that are assessed annually. As you can see, an amount a little over $1.3 million is collected annually, and these amounts are directly used to offset our general fund appropriation. So I thought this chart here shows a little bit more insight on what the amount of where the annual user fee contribution, what that is being used for, and how much of that annual contribution that is brought in by the user fee is directly offsetting that direct cost of that program. So if we look at this report, this is based on FY 18 or projected FY 19 costs actually, and our bus transportation costs next year are projected to be about $652,000. We bring in about $275,000 annually based on the current user fee, which is shown here on the far right. So our user fee contribution is supporting about 42% of the cost to run 10 buses annually on an annual basis. These are our regular transportation buses. Our athletic program, again, the user fee that's shown here on the far right brings in about $300,000. Our total costs of the entire athletic program in terms of salaries for coaches, all expenses, cost to get officials and referees to all the games, cost to buy all the supplies, buy all the equipment, rent the pool, rent the ice for some of our teams, costs a little over $669,000. So the amount of the user fee is supporting about 45% of that cost. The extracurricular activities, clubs, music, theater, etc., cost for the stipends for our club advisors is a little over $121,000. The $200 user fee that exists at the middle school and the high school brings in about $67,000, so that cost is a little over 50%, about 55% of our total cost. Our kindergarten program, the cost for our teachers and paraprofessionals to work within our full-day kindergarten program, brings the direct cost of that program is a little over $815,000. With the tuition fee that's being assessed, we're bringing in about $465,000 annually, so our cost is just a little over 50%. And we are obviously allowed to directly offset the direct costs of that program as well as some indirect costs. But we essentially use the tuition to help offset the teachers and the paraprofessionals involved with working with those students. And the preschool program, housed at the Little School, we assess a cost both in the full day and half day program. The cost that we bring in is about $140,000, and that is about 44% or so of our direct costs for the teachers and the paras working within that program. So overall, for our revolving account, the amount that we've come to expect is a little over $1.2 million. And that is just about 50% of our actual costs that we incur to run these programs: transportation, athletics, student activities, extracurricular, and then our kindergarten and our preschool program. So to give you another quick snapshot before we end for the presentation is our FY19 requested budget in the general fund is a little over $31 million. Some of the amounts that I've just kind of walked you through in both federal and state grants, as well as our revolving accounts, would compute to a little over $2.6 million. So overall, those two combined together, we're really operating a school budget of a little over $33 million, $33,856,651. Even though we're only asking the town and to support a little over $31 million, this is how the rest of the funds that go into funding a school budget and what those budget subsidies are, grants and revolving accounts that I've just kind of walked you through. That, of course, doesn't tell the full story. The school department also, as the bottom chart on this slide depicts, has come to rely pretty heavily on the generous support of our parent groups and parent associations, our PTOs. There are various in-kind gifts based on their budgets that help support a lot of enrichment activities, a lot of classroom supplies, and for our classroom teachers, a lot of appreciation luncheons and speakers and various other activities that all go into helping fund the educational experience. Is an annual amount on average of about $75,000 that the PTOs fundraise and earn and directly help support. And then there's various donations in the range of technology equipment, other supplies, transportation costs, helping fund big projects like the Little School Playground, which has happened in the last couple of years, upgrades to our athletic fields and so forth. We've come to rely on pretty close to $250,000 on an annual basis. So things that are happening outside based on the generous work by our support booster groups, parent groups, help kind of tell the full picture of everything that kind of plays into what goes into operating a school. So it's not just about the operating budget, the amount that is appropriated at town meeting, that's generated mainly by the taxes, the property taxes and so forth within the community. There are many other sources in terms of our grants that we rely on, our revolving accounts, and what we assess user fee and tuition costs for, and as well as the work that our PTO and support groups are doing, all kind of work to tell the full picture of funding a school budget. Before I end the presentation, I just wanted to give you some key dates in the future. So the budget presentation will be presented within the next couple of weeks. We're also going to do a budget webinar this year. The annual public hearing will take place on April 9th. The school committee will take their formal vote on the FY19 budget on April 30th, and our annual town meeting will be on June 4th this year. And just a reminder, the public can access key budget information by going to these links. I also will be posting information throughout the process by using my Twitter account, which is there. So we hope that you will continue to tune in the coming weeks to find out more information about the school department FY19 budget. That being said, I hope you found this presentation helpful today. And if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to me. Great. Thank you for your time today.